So in this video, we're going to talk about some very basic concepts of MATLAB programming. So the first topic we'll cover will be the notion of scripts, MATLAB scripts versus functions. Scripts, the main difference being that in scripts, the memory space to which the command window has access to is open. Functions, the memory space is not accessible through the command window. That's one of the main differences. The second part of this video will talk about control structures in MATLAB programming. In particular, we'll talk about if statements and loops that facilitate our lives in case of programming more complex functions. Before jumping right into it, I'll also throw in a reminder that there are some characters that are reserved in MATLAB that you cannot use to declare your own variables with, for example. Here is a list of them. For example, the equal sign is meant to be used in a very special way. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and the exponent here are also special characters. These are used for variable indexes, indexing, accessing elements inside arrays. These are used for range. These are concatenation of variables, and so on. This percent sign, by the way, is also used for comments, meaning whatever line is preceded by a percent sign, MATLAB will not try to interpret and compile it. And there are other ones as well. If you put a dot next to the array and multiply by something else, it does element-wise multiplication. We'll cover that later on when we're covering arrays. And there are a few logical operators as well. Right, so we're going to cover these two examples, scripts versus functions and control structures. These are three MATLAB files which are provided in the course website. So let's jump right into it. So let me clear the screen here. And, well, actually, I might as well close everything here. Right, so here's our current folder, right, which is this class 2 in our lectures as a subfolder in our lectures folder. And here are the contents of this folder, which I can also access by typing ls, for example, in the command window. And the first topic we're going to cover is this difference between script and versus functions. Here is a script. This is an example of a script here. This file called add2numbers_test.m. So we call a MATLAB file, or M file for short. And like we covered in the video before, you can call this file from the command window. For example, we can call add2numbers_test. So we're calling the name of this file here. We're leaving the .m file out of this call. And the minute we hit enter, oops, I misspelled, right? And MATLAB is smart enough to suggest the correct spelling because it found a function that had a similar name that I tried to type, but I forgot the B here, obviously, so already suggested the correct one, so I'll call that instead. And you can see MATLAB went ahead and executed every single line in this file. And here, in this editor here, you can see the lines numbered from 1 to 27. As we just described, the lines that are preceded by this percent sign are just meant to be comments, right? And I highly encourage everybody to comment their codes well, meaning before each line is typed up, you describe in plain English what that line is supposed to be. You may also want to include a preamble to any script or function that you build, describing what is the overall goal of this file. This is useful for not only for ourselves who are grading your assignments, but also for yourself to look up what you did months or years from now, and if you have good comments, you will still understand what you were trying to do in that file. So, so here the first line, right, which by the way, we can also copy and paste each line that is in here. So for example, I can hit the copy and go back to the command window here, type paste command and hit enter, right? I can execute them line by line like this by copy and pasting from the script, or just calling the whole script and executing all the lines at once, right? So the first command here is telling you to display the words hello world, right? This is your hello world programming example in MATLAB, right? And we then move on to the second section here in this file, where we do a few things. We declare x to be a variable here, and we assign the number 1 to this variable x. We have y here is another variable, we declare it to be 2. And then we call this function, which we call add two numbers, providing as input both x and y. And we assign the output of this function to another variable, which we call z. And then we have this code here to double check certain things. If I declare x to be 1 and y to be 2, hopefully the result will be 3 if I add them together. And so this line here is just checking that it is indeed 3. If it's not 3, MATLAB will spit up an error and tell you that something is wrong. Right? So, and here are a couple of different ways that you can check the two numbers are the same. Here, this is saying that this is exactly equal. Here's checking that the error between the addition of the two numbers and the number 9 should be less than a very, very small number, two completely different ways. Right, so let's go line by line here. In fact, let me copy all these lines from 10 to 13 here, copy from here, and paste in our command window, right, and execute. And you can see MATLAB went ahead and executed this without any problem. In fact, it didn't give me any error, right? And if we would like to see what value of z is, we can also just type z here and hit enter, and it says indeed z is 3. So this is why that line didn't give us an error. Right? So this is the concept of a function, right? So let's look at what this function looks like. And this is this file addTwoNumbers.m. And here's how you build a function. First word in the file should be function. Z equals, z is the output, right? You can name this whatever you would like to name. If you'd like to name it q, it can also be q. It's not important. Then you declare the name of the function, and the name of this function should be the same as the file name where you save this file, right? To call this file name, you could have called anything, but it's important that the file name be the same as the function name, so MATLAB will know what to search for when you're calling. This is how you declare the inputs, right? Not every function needs to have two inputs. Some function can have only one input. Some functions can have no input. Some function can have 5, 10, 100. And the function must have an end as well. So, and as you can see here, in this case, we're doing a very simple thing. Z here equals the result. Z should be equals x plus y. Ignore this line for now. We'll change it in a second, right? So, what we can call this function add two numbers. We can say 3 and 4. Hopefully, again, I forgot, I misspelled it, but so add 3 and 4. Hopefully the result is 7, and indeed that's what it is. Right, so we can call this function from a script this way, or we can call directly this function providing two inputs and receiving an output outside of it. So here's where there's some differences between them. Besides, you know, the function name and assigning inputs versus outputs, that's an obvious difference. But there's also a difference in the memory workspace. For example, let me reprogram this function so that in addition to doing this, and perhaps I'll do something different here. I'll do x equals 10. Okay, so let me run this part here again. In fact, I'll just copy this 3 lines here first. And so let's see what's z. Z is 3, right? It did the right thing. It said x equals 1, y equals 2, and it passed 1 and 2 into this function. The function was meant to add these two numbers, so z was 3, and that's still correct, right? But if you remember, inside this function, when it ran, we also went, after we declared the output z to be x plus y, we also went and changed the value of x. So within this function, we went ahead and changed the value of x. So one could have thought that if we inquire for the value x outside of this function, back in the command window, workspace, it's still 1 from us having declared 1 up here. So what went on? Did MATLAB forget to execute that line? What happened? The answer is no, MATLAB did not forget to execute that line. The line was indeed executed. The difference is in the memory space. When we passed the variable x and y here, when you refer to x and y inside this function, you're no longer referring to the actual x and y that were declared outside of the function. What MATLAB does instead, it copies the value in x, whatever value that was passed in into MATLAB, it copies into its own variables, which happen to be called x and y here as well. But this x and y inside the function have nothing to do with the x and y values outside of the function. So this is why when MATLAB is changing here x to something else, it's not interfering with what x was outside of the function. And that's the difference, one of the main differences between scripts versus function. Everything that you do in a script, right? So let's call the script function again, add two numbers. In fact, we can call from our history, right? You can then type whos, and you can see all of the variables that were there before. And if you like to inquire the values, this is x equals 400. So here we have a different, we run all these things. At the end, we run x equals 400, right? So you can see x is 400. X is not 10 as was programmed over here. So this is the basic concepts of scripts versus functions. Functions are meant to be self-contained. Their memory space is private. You cannot access this memory space from outside of the function. This is good. This allows you to organize things independently. So whatever goes on inside the functions is independent of any workspace variables or variables you declared outside the function. So this, it's a good thing to do, because imagine if you're building a very large program to do a very large computation. At some point you will run out of variables, so you use the same variables to do different things, and so you can do that if the variables don't interfere with each other. So this is like a protection, right? A safe playground. Scripts are basically just sequence of commands. The memory workspace is open. You can go change things and you will affect what goes on in the script, but it won't affect what goes on in the function. So that's the difference between a script and a function. And of course, as we already covered, whatever function you're trying to call must be either present in the current directory, which our current directory again is this one, or it must be present in the path. And again, if you hit Home tab here and you click the set path, again, you can see what directories in the path are available for you. So let's go on to control structures. Let's talk about if statements and loops and so on. So let's open up this other function, which is also provided to you. And let's clear the workspace again. So this clears both the memory space as well as the screen. So gives us some clean space to work with again. And here you can see we have, this is a good quiz question. Is this a script or is this a function? And the answer is it's a script, because it doesn't start with the keyword function that we just described. By the way, you can declare functions within scripts, and maybe we'll have another video about this, but all right, so here are some examples of things that we can do. Here's a variable, it's a string variable, meaning text. This is not numerical, right? So you can execute these things. Let me copy and paste so we can go one thing at a time. So we declare the string and we display the string, right? We can also just type my string. It will also display the variable like that. But let's jump into what this if statement is. So here's an if. This is a programming structure. It's pretty useful. Probably already covered this, but perhaps in different languages, Java, Python, what have you. This is the MATLAB syntax. So let's execute this. And right, we're checking is it true that 4 is less than 3? If it is true, we will display this is not okay, right? Something went wrong. If it is not true, then we say okay. So this happened to be okay. So we did the right thing, and MATLAB is working properly, right? So this is how you declare if statement. You say if, and you establish a condition. This should be a logical condition. And if this condition is not met, if this is met, you execute this line. If this is not met, you then execute this line. Of course, you can have more than one line within each subsection, right? So this is the basic if statement. Down here we have the famous for loop, and this is the MATLAB syntax. So let me copy and paste in here to show you what it looks like. So this is going from index to 1 through 5. For each index is going to say, okay, let me display the following string, and I'm concatenating the string. This number is, and I'm adding to it another string, which I'm converting the numerical value of my index into a string, and I'm attaching a period at the end. And of course, we're going to repeat this from 1 to 5, right? Or to whatever this value we decide to program, right? So this is the basic for loop. You can extend this concept to nested for loops. You can have for loops inside of for loops. Here's an example. So let's execute this guy. And you can see we're going from my index 1 to my index 2. So first it's saying, you know, it sets this to 1 and goes from 2 to 3. So 1.2, 1.3. Then it says, okay, now we finish this loop. We go back to, and we increment this index. So we go now to 2. We do have 2.2 and 2.3, then we go to 3, and so on. So this is the concept of a nested for loops. Here's a while loop. It's pretty much the same thing, but rather than determining the inputs and outputs, or the beginning and the end of this iteration, you declare this while this condition is true. So for example, here we have while I is less than 5, you do those things, right? But the minute that this condition is not met, that iteration will be, will not be executed, essentially. So there are many conditional statements that you can put in there. Here's, some ways that you can write them: logical and, logical or, right? Equality, less than or equal, less than, and so on. You can also add the break statement inside loops, so you can check a condition, so you can have essentially more than one condition. So here this loop is saying while 1 will always be met, right? Because while 1 is a logical, one is a logical true, right? So while true, you execute this. So this is it would keep going forever until I becomes greater than 10. Then it says that ran too many times, and break means break out of this while loop. You can also break out of for loops. So this is it. So in this video we covered again scripts, the difference between scripts and functions, as well as control structures. You can download these examples from the course website.